Hello, welcome to Finding Lightness in Blindness. I am Ann Wagner, and I am blind from a condition called retinitis pigmentosa, and I'm also a clinical psychologist.
And I'm Eric, and I don't have any credentials at all other than that I am married to a clinical psychologist.
So we thought we would share some stories to show that blindness often involves moments of humor and fun. This is not rehearsed. We're not quite sure what's going to show up. We're going to pick a topic to talk about and share some stories and see where it goes. But I have a couple of disclaimers. So I actually work for the VA, the Veteran Affairs Healthcare System. But I need to make it clear, anything I share today is in a role as a citizen psychologist. I am not expressing any official views of the federal government, nor am I entering into any clinical provider role with anyone who may view this video. And anything else? And I'm going to be trying to weave in some principles that might be helpful to people from a model of therapy that I use professionally that also was quite transforming for me personally, called ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, ACT, by Stephen Hayes. You can Google it, learn more about it. But as we go along, so now a story. But we actually decided we would pick a topic and then just kind of free float talking about it. And so we picked table manners. So why did we pick that?
Well, it's a rich subject. It's a delicious topic area. It has all sorts of pitfalls for the newly dating blind-sighted mixed couple, and we've encountered some of those pitfalls our very own selves.
So let's think about. So I'm going to weave in a principle here from ACT about the role of judgments in human suffering. So we've all absorbed all sorts of ideas from societal programming that we've learned maybe in our family culture or other influences.
Or maybe you've had them hammered into you by
right.
your family, not so much absorbed in the family culture as
hammered in, And the role of how judgments hurt, because there's no truth or facts actually in any judgmental thought, and yet we are surrounded by them. So early on, we all learn about the shoulds and the should nots. And if you don't do what everybody else expects, somehow you might be rejected or viewed as less than or not good enough. And there's that pain and hurt that completely invalidates our own core experience in the moment of what works for us, what we approve of. So when we first started dating, now 9 years ago, Eric knew I was blind.
She doesn't really hide it very well.
And I knew that his dad had macular degeneration, so he had some experience. He knew how to guide me. That was all awesome.
And I was kind of proud of having some blind
knowledge.
Yeah, thank you.
So when we went out on our first kind of dinner date, I like to use my fingers when I eat. And yet I didn't know his position on that. I didn't know if he would have judgmental thoughts. So I had to think, I hope there's something on the menu that's finger food that I can order so I wouldn't have to worry about trying to navigate a fork or knife in front of this man that I already knew I liked.
And I'm trying to remember, did I actually read the menu to you?
You did, which is thank you.
You're welcome.
And so I ordered a flatbread. Yay, it's like a little pizza and I could use my fingers. And did you have to do any thinking through? I'm just curious. Did you have any fears?
No.
Of
in fact,
anything
the only reason we remember what you had to eat was that you needed to pick something that you could eat without embarrassment. I can eat anything without embarrassment.
Yeah. I was just curious if you had any other fears or judgmental thoughts showing up that night.
No.
Unrelated to food, maybe.
No. When it's a first date, most of my fears have to do with things other than the food, and whether I'll make some kind of a mistake eating.
Okay.
Plenty to be afraid of, but not that.
I'm just validating. We have all sorts of programming and fears coming up in all sorts of contexts. So anyway, but then where I learned my preferences for eating is informed not just from the blindness, but also growing up on a farm with 2 parents, 5 kids. And because there's always work to do, we ate fast, but we were also, I was talkative, so I was always talking.
And in a family that size, I imagine you have to be quick or you don't actually get any food.
Possibly, yeah. So we always ate together as a family, which I know not every family does. But I loved the meals that were clearly meant to be finger food. To me, it's an adventure. I love the adventure of using my hands. And I could see better back then. RP is a condition of progressive loss of vision through loss of peripheral vision and night blindness. So even right now, I can still see some light and shadows. I'm not completely blind.
But she's never gotten a good look at me.
I don't actually see your features. Sorry, sweetie. But
it works out for the best.
Yeah. So anyway, no, I know you're quite handsome. Quite handsome. So, but back then, again, it was just what we did, and there was no self-consciousness whatsoever at our family table because we were together as a family. We were talking, and yes, we would use a fork and knife if that clearly was the better or the more effective thing to do, but we could use our fingers. And then as the blindness progressed, I find that I prefer using my fingers whenever I possibly can. And the decision making for me is that something I can actually pick up? And if I lean my face over the table or the plate and it's not going to cause a lot of mess, can I get it to my mouth? And if the answer is yes, I'm going to be using my fingers because it's my preferred. I feel more in control, more empowered, and it's more of that adventure for me.
I had the idea early on that it would be helpful if I would offer, if we were going out to eat, say if we were going to have a steak, that it would be helpful if I would offer to cut her steak for her. And I remember giving some thought to the question of how you offer that without seeming
to suggest that I can't do it myself.
Exactly. You don't want to seem condescending. You want to seem thoughtful.
Yeah.
And I wanted to seem thoughtful. And
I had never had anybody cut my steak for me before, and I thought, I wonder if that could actually help avoid gristle, because I hate the feel of gristle in my mouth. So
nobody likes the feel of gristle in their mouth.
Okay, yeah.
I don't really object to a little bit of fat, though, because in a really fine, say a ribeye or something, there are certain kinds of steaks where the fat is kind of expected. It's part of the deal.
And I cannot tolerate the yuck.
Right. So it wouldn't occur to me to surgically trim every bit of non-beef.
Because of his preference, right? So his own views and his own experience. So he would cut my steak early on, being careful to get gristle out, but leaving a little bit of that fat, not remembering that I said, I don't like the fat either.
Yeah.
So pretty soon I said, you don't have to cut my meat anymore. I'll
and
figure it out.
And I thought it was her strong woman plea for independence. And really what it was, I think, was that she didn't like the way I was doing it. If I had done it better, she would have been fine with it.
Well, either way, I can do it just myself.
So forget about steak for a moment. Think about toast. Now, I will still to this day, I will butter Aunt's toast for her because it's a messy thing. It's hard even for me to do, and I can see it. So I butter her toast, and then I hand her toast. And rather than just eating it, as I would expect her to do, she likes to use her fingers to feel that the butter has been evenly distributed.
It's how I like my toast.
And if it hasn't been, she'll use her fingers to smear the butter around to get it perfect.
Yeah. Yes.
And then she'll lick her fingers.
Of course I'll lick it. Yum.
So when we go to dinner at Buckingham Palace.
No, so we get to look at the judgment. So whoever said that a meal had to be consumed a certain way, when at fancy restaurants, they have the multiple forks and the multiple spoons. And I am all for, if that's how somebody enjoys the adventure of their meal, awesome, enjoy it. What I'm inviting us to look at, though, is the role of the judgments. If somebody's saying you shouldn't do it a different way, or somehow that's bad, or you're not good enough, and all these shoulds and should nots then lead to this feeling, this fear of being rejected or judged as not good enough. And the core of why that hurts so much is that we are born innately with wanting to connect to one another, to feel a sense of community and belongingness. So if we can just observe the judgments, like I know you had them when you saw me, and I think especially the times you see me want to get every drop of gravy off the plate and I'm using my fingers. And I know in times of COVID, we need to be more careful, but as long as you wash your hands really well and it's your plate and it's your food and you enjoy using your fingers, we should feel empowered in what works for us in our enjoyment to do that. It's not harming anybody.
They say don't touch your face, but they don't actually go so far as to say don't put your fingers in your mouth. They mean that too. But yeah.
But with caveats, all
sure.
this. Yeah. So he may have noticed those judgments showing up about you really shouldn't be doing that, but then because he loves me,
I do.
He was able to notice my enjoyment with my meal, that it wasn't harming anything, and we get to be together in the adventure of our meals. And I certainly don't judge him for the fact that he's using a fork and a knife when I'm enjoying my fingers. So it's all good, and we get to just note what shows up, notice what brings us closer and what divides us, and we get to stand against judgments, and we get to enjoy our food. So thank you for listening to our story.
We'll be back.
Bye.